Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. It is going down right now in SSS1-17 between we got war equal sign and I have to see if I can notice anywhere else. Oh, no, we've got a war dash as well. Going up against FG, squiggly, and squiggly AH, squiggly, but we'll keep it simple and just say war versus FG AH, so that way we don't have to always verbally explain or state the symbols. Thank you. So we got, again, a kingdom here for, or I should say the kingdoms that are in this division. We got 59, 60, 61, and 62. Having a little bit of a fight at the top of the ramp. Where we got war again. Ooh, wow. One of the FG guys, it looks like he was able to get a little behind there, all along with Garuda, Sir Joseph, doing a little bit of some discombobulation that they are attempting to create, or at least we like to hope that they are, not just kind of, YOLO Brick Squad 420ing it. Now, in AH's and FG situation, bear in mind, I think we're hitting this decently late, because at one point in time, FG was here at the bottom of the ramp. Now they have obviously positioned themselves on the top beginning part of the ramp. Seems like war is still fighting this out between both of their alliances right now. Beastmaster, is that Tilmole, Tilmole, if that's right. But we got an FG Thunder Rock that's out, just flying across. Get your Articuno on, if you know what I mean. So let's see how war plays this one out, right? Are we going to be able to push back FG AH, or are they going to be able to continue sustaining the top of this ramp? I believe we're here in Agoru, if that's right. We are. So we're just west of the Rift of Awakening here, or southeast of the Shaman Canyon at that ramp choke. So got a little bit of fighting that's breaking out here. Let's look at how some of their positioning is going. Let's see how we got this. So not really too much infantry currently. Looks like just a lot of range that we're seeing. Other side too as well. Oh, they're coming out early. Here we go. So we got 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I'm in a couple here. Oh, I kind of like this play here from FGAH, right? Trying to kind of get a little flank around the side, along with. Oh, okay, interesting. This is kind of somewhat cool. Now, my view on this. So a couple things here, right? Obviously, they want to try and destroy as much of the barricades as possible. However, there will come a point in time where if you feel like you have the numbers on your opponents at the top of the ramp, you can make the argument to disregard, or you could say temporarily disregard, the barricades to fight. If you feel, because again, if you're going to stay at the top of the ramp, you have to essentially have just as many numbers, give or take, or more numbers than your opponents, right? Because that's the only way you can essentially keep the status quo in check, where your opponents don't feel as though, okay, well, hey, now we can, now it's such an easy decision to make a push, where now they may have to be a little bit more, I don't want to say judgmental, but they might have to take a little bit more of information into account before making that decision to pull the trigger or not. Now, usually, as always, if you're attacking on your opponent's territory, you're always going to have to go against a faster replenishment time in most cases, because, again, your opponent's cities are just closer to the fight than your cities are. And so they'll usually be able to replenish troops and ranks or their legions a little bit faster than whoever is typically attacking. Especially if you're kind of going in, like we mentioned, right? If you're going into your opponent's territory. So a lot of range here from war. You're kind of seeing this, a lot of Lilias. We've got some Waldirs. We've got some Theas out there. Some Atheists. A little bit of flying. Of course, we got the Emrys or Bakshi, typically for your cav. FG kind of getting pushed a little bit here out the top. Again, I think War is actually okay with this. I'm trying to really kind of figure this one out, because you have a group here that could be pushing out together, focus firing some of these units down one by one, except we're not really seeing that right now. right? And this is kind of what I'm talking about, where you kind of have to make that decision on, okay, well, are we going to try and remove some barricades, or, excuse me, are we going to push a little bit, try and engage, attack from our position without necessarily having to overextend? That was a nice shadow games that just got thrown down there on the bulk. And this is one of the things we often talk about, right, where you're kind of seeing some of the clumping. A little bit of spread here, so this is actually okay. I really like how they did that spread there to avoid the time bomb. That seemed to be somewhat either well-timed or at least well-executed there. Now, Warrior seeing nice little group right here. This is where you could have FGAH spread out here and then just start hitting this. I mean, this is necessarily not ideal when we talk about being able to take advantage of groups. If FG and AH, like I said, spread out a little bit, they start attacking. Look at how dense all of these legions are, just layering on top of each other, right? Slash very close and being next to each other. This is just AoE heaven waiting to happen, which is one of the things. And kind of AH and FG are similarly doing a decent amount of the same, right? It's kind of almost turning into a murder ball, which is usually the thing we typically see in Rock, for example, and some other Kingdom Builders as well. But I think this could have actually played out better. Oh, that was a nice shadow. It was doing big negative. That burst strike coming down too as well. That Attendant Flames being thrown down. Another shadow fight. Another shadow games. I'm on 3. I'm keeping score. Looks like they're trying to get a little bit here off of. I just don't know if it's really worth hitting the flag at that point. Just because you saw that the moment he stopped, right? It's going to get repaired. You really have to be in an advantageous position, right, to where you're going to work off. Mostly, at least in this case, right, probably working the barricades, or even working the barricades going down a single line to even just kind of open up half, which is another way to kind of view how you're playing out barricades, or when it comes to kind of removing them, is, right, the typical thing is let's just remove them off the front. But what you could do is try removing barricades down a lane and then barricades again down a lane, right? That's kind of another way you can do it. You could even do it where you say, well, let's remove half the barricade, so we won't care about this half, but we're just going to open up this half. Something like that. I mean, of course, sure, if you can eventually remove all the barricades, that is and would be great to see that happen. But if you're just thinking about, well, how can I get access to this area pretty quickly if I just want to create some pathing lines, right? Or some frontline routes or roads, I guess could be one way of putting it. I feel like I'm digging too deep for this one. AHFG pushing up a little bit more now. Now this is, again, this is ideal, right? If you, like we mentioned before, if you have numbers and you're pushing and you're kind of putting them on the ropes, this is okay to do if you feel like the ratios are in your favor, right? Again, I would like to see a little bit more split. This is okay, right? This is a little bit better than what we're seeing from War, right? I would actually like to see War splitting like this as an example, right? I don't know if I want to say overextending. It's just, again, if you're going to keep pushing into territory and fighting, then it's important that the other FG and AH players are pushing with you. So you kind of have this line here, and you're just, moving forward together, if you notice me kind of moving forward my line. But the idea is that you want to be, because if you have a line, let's say you have your line, and you have one side that's pushing forward a little bit, and the other side is kind of still behind. I guess this is probably a better way to do it. So you're here, and you have this line that's pushing forward. You're missing out all this damage, right, ideally. So that's why if you're going to push, you typically want to push together, whether you're curving as a way of pushing or you're curving that way as a way of pushing. But you want to push together. You don't want to kind of like push like this or fall. You want to be very kind of unison with how you're not only spacing the field, but when you are choosing to engage or disengage. Because bearing in mind, every time you're moving without a certain amount of players, that's just that much less damage that you are unable to output on your opponents, right? So something like that is really important, especially if you're looking to try to mitigate as much of that margin of error, right? Where you're fighting without, all of your legions that could be outputting a lot of damage, and maybe because of that, your opponents maybe see an opportunity and they say, okay, well, hey, they're not really all fighting out here, so let's go ahead and just kind of jump up on this small group, right? They get that small win, and now all of a sudden they're reducing your overall forces in the area bit by bit, eventually creating a situation where they may have more favorable trades or favorable ratios that are playing out in their favor compared to yours, right? All because of these unforced errors and kind of overextending in situations where we didn't do, or engaging in situations where we probably should not have engaged in and should have either waited for a replenishment of troops or for us to kind of reform a line or two. And sometimes it just comes down to coordination too as well, right? You could have half your alliance's members that just know exactly what to do. Maybe the other half don't have as much experience. So there's always going to be that type of drop off where I don't view that necessarily as impactful as if you're necessarily overextending, because, you know, just kind of not, if you don't have a lot of experience where you have to go out there and play to get the experience, right? And so I'm sure one of the hardest things really overall can be sharing that information, right? And taking those things with kind of a grain of salt when you see those moments where some players may present to you, well, okay, it doesn't really seem like we don't necessarily have everything together, but not calling them out and, you know, ridiculing them because they made a mistake. Instead, just saying, hey, well, right, if you're out in the field, this is what I mean, of course, you should be prepping people ahead of time anyways, whether that ends up being via an email, if that's making a video, if that's an announcement on Discord, if that's getting into, you know, meetings or, you know, war rooms as an example as well. So that way you can communicate those efforts right to those players. Let's see here. Alrighty. So I'm not sure if we're going to end up seeing a decent counter here, from war. I mean, again, the amount that AG, AH, and FG have right now out in the field is pretty big. Even if we look at, so from what I'm understanding on the matchup, right now is we have war at 1 and then war at 5 going up against AH, BC, FG, and I think they said maybe BH, so I'm not sure who else is there, so I don't know if MIR is with war or not, but I know at least that's what we have. I'm trying to see what I wrote down here for some notes. Yeah, so never mind. So it looks like BC is fighting with war, at least from the last report that I ended up getting, I think, a few hours ago. So that seems to be the case. Again, if that ends up changing, you know, I'm sure just like, oh, wow, here we go. Nice little engagement here where they're deciding, all right, well, look, we're totally fine. We're just going in right now, even though you have all these people that are trying to destroy barricades, which, I mean, again, if it plays out for them, isn't really bad. It's just what I would say is if you're going to engage in these types of situations, focus on the units that are not building or that are not destroying your barricades, right? Focus on the ones that are in the open field and they're constantly attacking, right? That's really where we kind of should be. Now, you could see some focus fire happening here on Lucum's, right? This Emrys. Maybe not as much as could be. The other way to do it like this is you withdraw a few troops, right? And then you start re-engaging and re-attacking while you're drawing in, you know, if this was Farley or whoever the kind of attacking unit, right? And this is, God, it's rough. I'd have to like make a whole video, a separate video or even a series just on kind of on-field tactics and strategy. But one thing that you can do, which I believe is one good approach, is where if you have a unit that's going out and attacking, or being the kind of vanguard or charge unit from your opponents, right? What you do is you kind of leave one unit, not necessarily out in the open, but kind of waiting for your opponent's unit to engage on it. And right before it happens, you should be kind of withdrawing your troops. So you withdraw them a little bit, you start attacking, and then you start withdrawing your individual unit, right? So it's kind of the same thing as if you think about how, and again, I'm generalizing here, of course, but if you watch war movies as an example, you may notice how you'll have, like, let's say you'll have person A, right, who's firing, and then person B will fall back. They'll start firing. Person A falls back more. they start firing, person B falls back, right? So, it's kind of something like that. Again, I imagine that to really make it look pretty and potentially feasible, you most likely would have to have. Now, I kind of like this, what War just did there. Not necessarily the grouping, but I like how they kind of went to one side, said, look, we're just going to focus fire the part that's sticking out the most. This is not necessarily a bad plan. I would like, of course, a little bit of a spread, but again, if we're just talking about kind of raw approach in the tactics, this to me isn't really bad. Again, not like we said, not the most ideal, but it isn't bad by any means. It's just, again, I'd like to always kind of see opponents or sides not take unnecessary amounts of damage, because you're in a situation where you can really poke down AH and FG, and you don't want to overcommit in situations where you're grouping, you're going in, and let's say all of them decide, well, we're just going to stop removing the barricades, and then we're just going to go in on you right now. Here we go, wherever that behemoth, here it comes. Here comes the giant El Giganto. This is decent, though. He might not get that much damage off. I mean, you already got half the units that are outside of the circle. So this actually isn't too bad. Looks like Giant got off 2 hits so far. And now they're focusing the Giant down from the end. Finally gets the move on there for Tamale, if that's the Beastmaster's name. But again, in these cases, right, spread yourselves out. If you're able to kind of go up here and start attacking some units, lovely. It doesn't seem as though you'll probably be able to hit anyone here. I mean, this Beastmaster was dropped decently when it comes to covering essentially the entire top of the ramp choke. So that is, I mean, if you think about it, is good positioning, especially where, if you look at the Beastmaster covers the top of the ramp, and it covers, for all intents and purposes, a majority of the choke, going a little bit deeper, even though the open field opens up a bit more. Actually, I would argue like a really good position throw down there for the behemoth on just where it was placed. Also gives FG and AH a little bit more time. Now this could be something where if they notice that the behemoth left, maybe go in. So some of them are actually engaging right now while the behemoth is still working and running its way back. So I wonder how much of a heads up play we're going to see here from them, right? Are they really noticing the behemoth, or are they maybe going to see it late? So we will see here. So see, now they're backing up. See, what this shows is that they most likely didn't have someone that was kind of that on-field general who's just paying attention to everything that's happening, and then, kind of giving some instructions here and there. Which, to be fair, is also something we really haven't seen done, or at least I haven't seen done or have heard about anyone really doing thus far. It doesn't mean that no one is. But it is something that, if I ever come across a group that has something like that, totally would love to kind of showcase off that, if it's one alliance or a few alliances, because to me, I just have no doubt in my mind that a position like that, whether it is the primary shot caller position or an assisting shot caller position, is not, that is incredibly important to an alliance's function out there in the field. So, sweetness. But yeah, man, I mean, AHFG, still holding strong, still getting good replenishment that's coming up too as well. I mean, you could even see a little bit more here for the players that are still removing some of the barricades on the lower level. So War kind of has to, this is the thing about fighting behemoths, ideally, is that you have to think about, well, either you have enough players and you have enough damage to where you can burn or really DPS the giant or a behemoth down quickly, or you do not have enough to really get them down as fast as possible, and then you may find it more beneficial to wait out the timer for the behemoth to go ahead and be removed, and then you can go and we're kind of re-engaged at that point. I think with where war is currently, that most likely is going to be the better play for them to opt, just because it just doesn't look like they're really downing the behemoth that quickly with the amount of players they have. Now, you could also make the argument, well, not everyone's focus firing the behemoth. That is true. You probably would have to see if you had everyone or the majority of the players focus firing it down, maybe over a couple seconds to kind of see what that damage looks like. And then, probably you can make a better call at that point. But yeah, I mean, they're working on it. You can see those players, and you have some here at the bottom who are trying to remove some of the barricades as well. So yeah, totally would be interested, though. Again, if you're playing here in SSS1-17, would love to know what you guys think as far as, how has the fight been going? Have you guys been enjoying the battles? Again, I don't know too much about the history or, any kind of general storyline, so it's not necessarily something I would be incredibly privy to. I do know a little bit from people I've spoken to, but not probably as much as others do. So for me, always being able to hear from those who are playing here currently, especially if you've played Season 1, now kind of coming to Season 2, always nice to hear from those who have a little bit more of a backstory too as well, and some of the alliance history, some player history, maybe how some of the diplomatic relationships came in, if there was any unions that came in as well as Season 2. But the one thing I'll always say, as you often hear me say it, I love PvP. So being able to watch as much PvP as possible and just talk about it and, see what we notice, what we don't notice, if there's certain trends, are there certain similarities, what are we seeing people run, tactics of alliances, all of that and more is incredibly insightful, or I should say exciting. That's probably a better word for me when it comes just to what I have the opportunity to watch and showcase off. So let me see. We're at about 22 minutes right now. Looks like we're seeing a few more legions coming out from war. I mean, again, it looks like they might have enough here to really challenge FGAH. Maybe they're just waiting for the behemoth to run its course. Want to fight for fun? Join AH if you want to just flex your muscles. Join war. As now, it's funny because people are sort of really pointing out to me because apparently I miss these things when they're posted. But on some of my recent videos, I've been having, I guess, a few people here and there mention the comment section in World Chat about how some of the World Chat posts are just incredibly funny or just caught them off guard, and it is hilarious because I've gone and back and watched some of the videos that I've put out for war, and they've somebody puts a timestamp out or if they mention it, and I'll go and watch it, and I'm just shocked that I missed these things. But to be fair, it's probably, I would imagine, because I'm not so incredibly focused on it. Shocked more so as not necessarily missing it, but shocked because of maybe what exactly was said. That's probably more the shocking part, really. But yeah, wow, they got a lot more now. FGAH, they have a lot more units. War's brimming a little bit more too. I mean, again, you can see some more replenishment here, right? That's coming. But will we just see a big all-out war? Part of me feels as though once the behemoth goes away, then we're probably going to end up seeing a decent engagement here from war on them. Oh, sorry, from war on to AHFG. Oh, here we go. Are we about to go down? To throw it. The same, man. Maybe I just haven't been keeping up with time. I'm shocked that this giant is still up. Part of me almost wonders if it would be, I don't know, maybe too much. Maybe internally. Maybe if you're the one who's controlling the Beastmaster, it'd be cool if it kind of showed you what that countdown was or time. I mean, they are definitely removing some barricades, that is for sure. A little side fighting going on too as well. Again, not bad. Little bunching right there. Again, man, they're putting in where the Giant still has a little bit of health left too as well. Yeah, man, I think. Oh, wow. So they're going a little bit deeper in here, man. FG Garuda going a little bit more. War coming around the side here for AH and FG. Yeah, I'm not sure if we're going to end up seeing a big push here from Warman. It feels like it's going to happen, but it just hasn't, right? We're kind of getting back and forth pokes. And the poke game, incredibly important, especially if you're kind of having two sides or on two different planes of the field, or I shouldn't say planes, two different parts of the open field, right? The poke game is incredibly important, especially if you're trying to win the kind of numbers game or numbers war by, inherently having more alliance power, having more engagement too as well. So, gonna have to see. Going to have to see here as I now attempt to recollect my thought process. I mean, they are staying. War is staying a little bit here on the edge, but now you can see the Beastmaster getting a little bit more low. So obviously, being able to do as much as they can right now with what they have. I am curious though to see if we are going to see some type of engagement from War, maybe either once they get the Giant down or once Giant goes bye-bye. See, so we got some Velds, Walder, Lilia, Kanara, Bakshi, Thea. Oh, Giant's almost done. Are we going to get it? Are they going in? They could be going in. It looks like they are, at least a little bit here. Having everyone focusing the Giant probably will help. So it looks like they do have everyone focused on Giant. Okay, so that was again good to do. Given Giant did overextend a little bit there, but Giant also had not too much held left. Finally, here we go. We had to just work our way through those multiple minutes of mental struggle, for me at least. Just because you're kind of at this stalemate back and forth. You can only fill so much, in my opinion, when it comes to commentary. I have no problem talking for a while, and I guess I could have probably said and talked about a couple of things, but it's always nice when we can kind of get into some of the action. So War, finally, after that Giant goes down, getting a little bit of engagement here on the FGAH troops, while they're still trying to remove as many of the barricades as possible. We got a little bit of flanking action here from some of the AH, FG. It looks like a BH unit there as well. Nothing really happening here. I don't know if there's anything happening on the back side. Doesn't look like. You do have some BH players, though, that are chilling. So curious if they will try to engage. Ooh, nice artifact damage there. Yeah, so we'll give you guys this last hurrah, even if we end up going a little bit more than 30 minutes here. I think that will still be all right. Time Bomb, Burst Strike getting thrown down. Nice, getting a little bit more damage. Let's see here what we got. So we got a Bakshi. There, we got Kanara, some Lilias, got an Eliana, Thea, Eliana, Waldir, got an Atheist. On the other side, we got some Theas, got a Guanwin, got a Craig. That Atheist. See, we got an All-Win, two All-Wins. So, yeah, I'm a big fan. I love the control tree, right? So I love seeing kind of Veln All-Wins out there. I think it's great when you can have a little bit of some CC, some kind of debuff legions that are out there who can assist in what they're able to do. However, it's also pretty important that when you're running those specific type of legions, right, the understanding is that you're trying to inflict on as many legions as possible to ensure kind of delay, right, based on what the talent tree can do, especially if you're running those specific control type heroes as primaries. It is something that can, I believe, at least really help, and could even maybe turn the tide for some of the fights if used appropriately and correctly, of course. All right, man. War is pushing. Just so we can honor this attempt here that they have of pushing out. We will see where the alliances will go. So I will say this, I like what we're seeing from FGH right now. This is a little more ideal when we're talking about spreading out and kind of curving. So again, I'm going to give you guys a good job on this one because this is something that, even though not everyone is attacking, let me be clear there, right? It would be different if everyone was attacking and they were spread out and then kind of maintaining that arc spread with all that spacing. However, this to me is still good with what we're seeing because it's limiting, as we often talk about, the amount of AoE damage you're taking and gives you that opportunity to inflict more AoE damage on your opponents, right, if they're not kind of returning that same formation in kind. Well, we should say similar/same. But yeah, still doing a little bunching. Could even be going up here and then maybe even attacking from that side. Same thing here as well, attacking here. You do see a little bit of a fight kind of happening here in the corner, but nothing, I don't know, nothing really severely impactful. Right, kind of feels like me as though it's just a bit back and forth, even though you have the AHFG camp that is still destroying barricades. A little bit less, of course, than what they had just a while ago. But if the AoE group sticks together and they keep firing on their opponents, I kind of almost have no doubt in my mind that they will eventually overtake at least the group, right, the attacking group. And that would then eventually give them opportunities to come over and hit the builders. But this is one of the big things we often talk about, right, is focusing on the units that are actually doing the PvP. Don't worry about the ones who are building barricades, destroying barricades, keeps, flags, etc., right? Especially if you have open field marches that are nearby. Focus on those first because that is something that will give you, will create and then hopefully give you, right, some additional advantages as well. Alrighty. Oof. That vicious strike. There goes the arrows. You can see the damage. A little bit low, 3, 4, 5K. It's not that much for that one. That reverse shadow game. So it's only hitting one person, though, with Tangling Flames. That burst strike getting thrown down there, right, hitting up to 4 people. That nice AoE hit. And now you're kind of in this situation where we're almost, murder balling it up right now. Not a fan of the murder balling, just because I think the quality level of PvP that Call of Dragons is, I don't want to say owed, but almost, should be attempted, is, higher than kind of what you would usually see in a game like Rock and or others, where you just, because you have the limitations of not necessarily having, true kind of built from scratch, or maybe just say in the beginning of the game, ranged play, right, compared to CoD, Call of Dragons, where in other games you're kind of having to fight, essentially touching each other, almost like everyone's an infantry unit, regardless of what the type is. Looks like AHFG might be holding this off. We're going to have to see how this one plays out. I mean, again, war, or I guess kind of already seeing how it does play out, but to attempting, need to use a little bit more of a diversified phrase. Gonna work on that one. BH calling the Thunder Rock there for only butter. Only butter. Love it. Alrighty, we're at almost 35 minutes. I'm going to call this one off. Love the back and forth here, even though mainly it was kind of holding and then fighting and then holding, fighting, or holding and then trying to push a little bit, at least on the FG-AH side, right? Because at least thus far, we didn't necessarily see them get pushed off the ramp. Though I do believe there was opportunities there for War to do so. Awesome to see the back and forth and the constant PvP, right? I think anytime you're able to have good, sustainable PvP that's going for a long period of time, you got to give kudos always to both camps. So this was awesome to see. Again, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments down below. That is going to do it for me, as always. Until next time, I will catch you all later.